Hello, I'd like to thank you all for joining us for this Lunch and Learn webinar about personal experiences with supported living. This webinar is being sponsored by the North Carolina Council on Developmental Disabilities and the North Carolina Money Follows the Person Project, a Medicaid project that assists Medicaid-eligible North Carolinians who live in inpatient facilities to move into their own homes and communities with supports. This project is being operated by Via Health. And today, our presenters are Lars Johnson, Supportive Living Director with FIRST, and Janet Price-Farrell, Executive Director with FIRST.
Making that, I guess, clear to them is that this is their their home and their key, and so I don't have a key to folks' homes. Landlords don't have a key to their homes. It's their home. We also want to use technology, make sure that we're using that, and as much as we can. We're using right now. We're using a company called Rest Assured, and so we're still figuring out how that works best for the folks that we're supporting. So, all right, next slide. So our goal, we're supporting adults to move, obviously, to their own home. We also are wanting to make sure that these folks have tenant rights. We want to make sure that they are getting to choose, everything about their lives. So that might be choosing their furniture, choosing, what's obviously what's in their home, and then choosing their staff, and then also choosing a roommate if they've selected someone or want someone to be a roommate, or if that need is there. We want to make sure that they're they're part of that process. All right, next slide. All right. So in the beginning, we sat down and we tried to discuss, coming up with something to call this person who is this, and we've decided on calling them a key holder. So we're not calling them client, participant, person with disability, consumer, member. We're really working on making sure that we call them a key holder, because that's what they are. They're holding a key to their own home. So it's a kind of a change in ways of how we're supporting someone too. So, all right, next slide. So obviously we didn't invent this this process of someone living in their own home. We did look at other models that are around the country, and I've listed a few here that we've talked to these folks and learned from them about what they've done and what's been successful, and trying to take some information from them, and learn from them. So recommend, if any of these if any of these are interesting to you, that to look those up, and call them, and they've been open to talking at any time, and obviously open to us visiting as well. So, okay, next slide. Right, so we started my first key in 2017. Our vision is to assist individuals with developmental disabilities in finding their place in the community. Obviously we know that it takes a team of folks to fulfill this mission. We've had great community staff. We've had some wonderful neighbors. We've had landlords. We've had care coordinators. We've had a lot of folks that have been involved in this process as well. And obviously the caregivers and family members have been supportive, with this. We at FIRST, we do say that we're not this cookie cutter program. We look at the individual person and determine what what kind of programs would be best for them, and then meet their needs in that way. Finding what is it that they need, and then try and build around that. So, and that's a struggle at times, but that's what we want to make sure that we've accomplished. So, all right, next slide. So obviously this is a huge undertaking, and we understand that. And it's a shift for not only folks with and without disabilities, but it's a change for folks in our community. And so we understand that, and I think part of my job, is not only supporting the key holders, supporting the staff, but it's also supporting our community members, and that means providing education to them. So it might be meeting with, an example might be meeting with some church community members, and talking about how can churches get involved, or meeting with some other organizations and finding out how they can be involved in this person's life, or and so that I think it just goes back to the educating the community. So at first we're a parent run organization, so we know parents have a lot of fear about safety, and so we build upon that and saying that um, you know we're trying to make sure that these persons with disabilities are allowed to live you know their own lives, and that is scary, and it's scary for a lot of folks, but with the support, and having us there and around, I guess, hopefully makes it less scary for parents, as well as the folks um, with the disability. Okay, next slide. All right, so we've had obviously some struggles, and some obviously positives of having supported living. Some of the struggles that we've had, we're located in Asheville and Buncombe County. So affordable housing has been a difficult aspect for us, in the sense that we have Section 8 housing, but you have to live in Section 8 housing um, for at least a year before you get a voucher, and then you can move on to other Section 8 housing. And so, but then the waiting list to get into the Section 8 housing is about 3 years. So it's what it's meant for us is that we're having to kind of reach out, and find other landlords that are available and who are willing to do something new. And so that's been kind of a struggle for us. Also, finding roommates, support staff. It's we put ads in the paper, like I'm sure other agencies do. We've also, I've looked at on Facebook as a one roommates and support staff. And then also, I think another struggle is, just friends. I mean, if you think about someone that we've at least been supporting, who might have lived in an institution, and then they move out and onto their own, then whom have they known as friends? And so I think that's the you know figuring out how that might work for this person. So, for example, one of our folks, who you'll learn about in just a minute, is 20, and so what are most 20-year-olds doing living in Asheville? Well, they're working full time, or they might be in school, they're in college, and so that's how they're meeting people. And so for us, it's like, oh, here we have someone who's been in an institution for X amount of years, and now they're out, on their own, and how do we help them build friendships up. Um, and then also personal decisions, thinking about institutional decisions, people making decisions for folks, parental, parents making decisions all the time or thinking about things, and then staff, their kind of ideas about how things should go, and that all that versus informed decision making, the person with the disability being able to make their own decisions and us supporting them in that. So that's been a struggle. Some of the positives that we've had, and actually we've had a lot of positives, just the idea of having person centered plans, and making this person with the disability the this is why we're here, why I'm here. And so um community support staff, like I said, even though it was a struggle sometimes in finding folks, once we found someone, and and we found a lot of good folks that they've been, they come to work, they do their job, and but they also love what they're doing. So um, another great thing about um, another positive is the key holders that are involved. They get to make their own choices. They get to make a choice for what home they're living in, what support staff is working with them, and then also, exciting thing is for them to maybe go out and buy their own furniture, and and pick out the colors that they like and that type of thing. Like I already talked about a little bit about supportive landlords. We've had those. Um, we've had landlords that are willing to meet with us. So, uh, and we've also had supportive families. Obviously that's been a productive. So, all right, next slide. All right. So if you're looking at this picture and thinking about um, our our area, Western North Carolina. Those are kind of some of the ones here at the bottom that kind of we have a lot of a lot of folks who have different ways of living. And so my question to you is just thinking about what makes your home a home. Um, you know, it it is what we put into it, and so I think that's such a key with our folks as well, and for them to decide, you know, it might not be the best home, or it might be something the perfect home, but it is their home, and that's that's the key, is that it's their home. So, all right, next slide. All right. So the first person I want to talk about is this young person who she had been residing in various residential settings across North Carolina, and she was um, at the Iverson Riddle Center, and that's where I met her, and we talked and found out, some interest that she had in the community, and wanting to move out on her own. And so, we talked about all the places that she lived, and she lived in lots of different places. Um, and so we, tried to come up with some plans about what she might look for in a home, and as well as a community. All right, next slide. All right. So, like I said, you know, the interesting part, I guess, is that she was still in the institution, and so I took pictures of possible living places, and took those down to her and had her kind of look through the pictures, and then she might come to Asheville. She came to Asheville a couple of times, and actually went and looked at some of the places, and then chose the home that best met her needs. And this is a picture of her home now. She we also have a picture coming up about she signed the rental lease herself. I took the lease to her and read through it with her, and we talked about all the different parts of it in the lease, and then like I said, she signed it herself, and so which was pretty pretty cool for that. And then she also picked out her own furniture. She told me that she really wanted a red microwave, and so I don't know if if you go shopping a lot, but it's really hard to find a red microwave. So we went to lots of places before we actually found one. She also liked blackout curtains, so in her room, she could it stays dark all day. So she really enjoyed that. She found a sectional couch that she loved, and it took the movers at least extra hour to try and get that in the trailer there. So that was pretty cool. And then she has a, I guess a flair for her interior designing of her house, and so she picked out the curtains in the living room and the kitchen, and all throughout the house. So it was really a heartwarming experience to be a part of that for her. So all right, next slide. All right, so this young lady, so she's experiencing supported living for the first time. She is making choices, making her own choices. She's not having to we sit down with her, and I go over some of the choices with her, and provide that like I said, informed decision making with her. But she's still she it comes back to her, and we try and provide here's what the consequences might be, and but she still makes those choices. And she like I said, I try not to ever forget that she is 20, and she's experiencing what it means to be 20, living in Nashville, which is just that's something into itself. So all right, next slide. Some other things that she had told us, or told me over the time that she's been here, is that she's interested in meeting a boyfriend or having a boyfriend. She wants to hang out downtown Asheville at night, and she's been able to do that by riding the we have a bus system, public transportation, and so she's learned that, and she's been able to do that, and also go to the mall and that type of thing. She wants to spend time with her family, so she's been able to do that as well. We've helped facilitate some of the meetings with her family, or staff might have taken her and dropped her off with families as well. One of the other things she wanted to do was stay by herself in her own home. If you know enough or know about being in an institution, and there's always someone around, and there's always someone in your space, and that was one of the things that she told us, that she just wanted people to respect her personal space. And one of those is we had staff staying with her at night, and then we had a roommate, and she just wanted that time to herself in her own home. And so we moved towards that. So and then she also wants to choose who she spends time with. Was it a particular staff person? It might have been somebody that she met in the community and she wanted to spend some time with. So we tried to be um, or continued to be open with her about that, and explain and talk about folks that you meet in the community, and but and then also just respect her for that, and who she meets, and that type of thing, like you would do with, I guess, anybody that you meet. So all right, next slide. All right, here's a picture of her signing her lease for a new home. Lots of paperwork, and she did such a great job. Just we like I said, we read through all of it, and I talked about certain parts of it that were kind of that the landlord wanted me to highlight. So we discussed those as well, and she was just so pleased and happy, and it was just amazing. So all right, next slide. All right. Another person I wanted to talk about is this 21-year-old guy with autism. He recently graduated from high school, or not recently, but he last year or so he graduated from high school. He had been living with his parents, and his younger brother graduated from high school and moved off to college. And so I think that got him thinking, well, why am I still at home? And why do I have to be here? Why can't I go do something else? So his parents contacted us, and we talked about finding a place for him to live and finding some roommates. And so he, his parents kind of helped him find a place to live. And then we helped with the finding a roommate, and a roommates, I guess. So that's just a kind of a different way of looking at someone wanting their independence. So, right, next slide, please. All right, so this young guy, he's got a job where he works 2 days a week. He works at a fudge factory, and he likes going there, and he's kind of set his hours of going to work based on his sleeping schedule. So he's enjoyed that. It's interesting, the job they just they kind of cut back over the winter hours and cut back some of the staff, but with him they've asked him to continue coming 2 days a week. So I thought that's really speaks highly of him. He also volunteers 2 days a week at the local library, and then he lives at his house, and he's got two roommates, and they provide some support to him, some throughout the night, but they're also mainly just roommates because they have jobs other places too. Some of the things that he likes doing that he involves himself with is he goes back and watches high school basketball games, and he loves playing golf. He does that on Sundays, usually most Sundays. He obviously he he lives near a college, and so he goes to various college events, sporting events. He likes going to movies, and then he also likes watching movies at home. And one of the things we just talked about recently is spending. He wants some more time too to spend by himself, and so having so we met with his mom and met with some of the staff, and talked about times throughout the day that he'd be able to spend by himself, and then be able to ask for assistance if need be. And so that really made him happy, and we're really happy that he's able to do that. So another thing about this young guy is that he's known throughout the community. His parents um, are work at the local college, and so he also he just has a good aura about him, I guess. I mean, he seems to be able to. He never meets a stranger. He remembers folks that he's met, and the community has really embraced him, and so that's really been nice to see. So, all right, next slide.
Thank you so much, Lars, for that overview. We did ask when everybody registered if they would submit any questions that they had, and we had some fabulous questions that were asked by the current attendees. So we're going to kind of go over them. We clustered them based on their topics. So the first questions regard staffing. So how was supportive living staff selected? What was the average rate of pay, which is a question that we also received in the question panel of this webinar for supported living staff, and how are they paid? What is the turnover rate that you've experienced at first? What trainings do you provide to your staff? And then, do most individuals who use supported living have one staff or multiple staff? So I'm going to turn that over to Lars and Janet to answer.
Okay. So the how is supported living staff selected? So we have folks apply online, or they send their resume to me, and then I kind of read through the resumes and applicants. Then I invite folks to an interview, and kind of, I guess you could say, kind of weed out through some of the folks. And then I invite them to interview with the key holder, and the key holder has the final decision. And I must say that I'd probably say out of all the folks I've interviewed, probably about 90% of the folks that I've interviewed, they said that they've told me that they've never been interviewed by the person that they'll be supporting. So I think that's a, you know, I don't know. It's great that that's what we're doing, and and that's what we believe, and so that's been really really cool thing. So our rate of pay, we start about at $14, and it just kind of goes up depending on obviously the individual and their experience, and then also the person with the disability also kind of depends on them as well. We pay staff hourly. Um, I don't know how much else to say about that. What is the turnover rate? I don't really have a specific rate, I guess, and I think it's also kind of skewed a little bit because, like I said, the key holder, um, plays a part in that as well. And so if the key holder feels that the staff person is not meeting their needs, then they, say to me, "Hey, I don't want that person around me," or they're, you know, I don't know. I mean, other examples of that, but and so then we, try and move the staff to someone else if we can. So like I said, the turnover rate, I don't really have a exact a number on that. So the training that we provide the staff, I'm a CPI certified nonviolent crisis intervention, so I train staff on that. We also do informed decision making, and then we also have first aid CPR, and then obviously with at least the two folks that I talked about today, we have extensive meetings with, before someone is starts working, extensive meetings with the families, and then, extensive meetings with myself to, discuss the key holder, and then, finding out, what information is needed to begin, begin working. So I don't want anyone to, of course you get nervous the first day going to work, but you should have, all the information, that you can have. So um, do most of the individual use one staff or multiple staff? Obviously, we we use depends on the key holder and what their needs are. Obviously, that determines the number of staff that are needed. So we have some key holders that have one staff, and then we have one, couple of key holders that have 3 to 4 staff. So
Something I wanted to add about the staffing, it's really important to look at the staff needs of the individual or key holder, but also the staffing needs of the staff. So of all the ones we support, we have 4 different ones. None of their staffing looks the same. So we don't have a shift that's 8 to 2 and everybody works 8 to 2 across the board. So everything is so individualized, there's not a real staffing schedule.
that's great. Kelly, anything you want to add to that? Or,
No, I'm also reviewing the questions that are coming in, but none of the questions that have come in right now regard staffing. So we'll go ahead and move on.
Okay.
Another question
Okay.
that came up was phrased quite a few ways by different attendees is questions about logistics and liability. So how do you get leases for individuals and their roommates? Have there been any additional liability issues or concerns? And then on the question section of the webinar, Dancy asked, if a key holder loses a roommate and is in the process of looking for another, is there financial support available during that period of time if the key holder cannot afford to pay all their bills alone?
I'll take these.
Okay.
Okay. Each of the key holders has a lease with their landlord, and so we have like different landlords, so the leases are very different. And we have not put roommates on the lease except for in one situation. We have a roommate agreement, with the individual and the staff instead of having the roommate on the lease, because you may not want that roommate, if they get fired, to have tenant rights. And so our roommate agreement allows for that person to be removed if that's necessary. But again, they're all individual based on what the landlord will let you do and what the needs are. As a liability issues and concerns, yeah, of course there are, but we had a sit-down, long conversation with our insurance person and went over each individual and looked for issues there, and then working with her thought out of the box and didn't say this is how we have to do it, this is how we could do it. And your insurance agents are wonderful resources. I know some providers, people that are on this phone call, don't even know who your insurance provider is because that's not your job, but that really helps a lot. There's lots of rules you have to look at, but if you look at the rules, then you figure out how it can work for you instead of against you. And one more piece I thought about liability, also working with your HR department. I know people that have big provider agencies have so many HR rules and regs. We have access to an HR attorney, an employment attorney, and sat down with her, went through all the things, and she goes, oh, but if you do it this way, you can do this. And so that's been very helpful, being open with the people that have the information and then letting them help us make decisions and not just listening to this is how we do it stuff. Anything, Lars?
No, that's good. No, that's...
Okay, fantastic. Thank you, guys. Okay. Next question we had was regarding the service definition and if any changes or modifications have been made to the service definition to make it clear. Jesse, I think you were going to speak on that.
Based on what I've been informed by Kenneth and worked with Kenneth Bossell at the Division of Medical Assistance, the stakeholder groups that have been meeting around the supported living definition and just the innovations waiver update recommended several changes to the definition to clarify 24-hour support, kind of back off of the idea that it has to be face-to-face in certain levels, and that it's customized more to the individual's needs. And also, there's supposed to be additional clarity in staffing patterns and family that are providing the services. That's the extent of what I know. I haven't actually seen the draft definition, but that's the best I can answer it at this time.
Great. Thank you so much, Jesse. Okay, moving on, we got a lot of questions about the fit of individual who is the key holder and also just kind of overall philosophy of supported living. So questions included, do you see supported living as a model that will work for an adult with ID once their parents or guardians have passed? And what are the ideal members to be referred to these services, as well as members who are not ideal candidates? What level of independence does an individual have to already have in order to qualify for supported living? And I'm going to have Lars and Janet answer that first, and I think Jesse also has some information about that.
So I guess for the first one about do we see supported living as a model that will work with adults? The easiest answer is yes. I mean, that's who we're I think we're, like Janet mentioned, I mean, we're not this cookie cutter organization. I mean, we based on what each individual needs, we look at that and then, build services around them that, meets their needs. So I don't know, Janet, do you want to add to that or?
Yeah. Since I'm a parent of a 21-year-old, I think this is a service that you don't look out after the parents have passed. You want to get their lives established so that when the parents pass, the individual's life continues on and doesn't take the jump off the cliff and then decide to do supported living. But that's my opinion and as a parent. So that is definitely a goal for after the parents pass, but I think you got to start beforehand. And the ideal candidate for a person for supported living, there is not an ideal candidate. I think any person can do this. We have individuals that function high. We have individuals that we have one that we're getting set up in supported living who is nonverbal. I think many people would never see him living in his own space. So there's not an ideal situation, and we don't even have, we do an assessment using the POMS and some other tools just to understand what the individual wants and what they need help with, but there's not a test before they can come into the supported living program. It works mostly out to, this is what the individual needs and can we do that? Not because of their ability, it's more about our ability to meet their needs.
Wonderful, thank you. Jesse, do you want to add to that?
I've been in this field a very long time, and I remember going to a conference in 2010 and hearing Tara Larson speak. She was about to retire, and she made a statement that has just kind of stuck with me. She said that the system needed to quit waiting for people to be ready. People are ready. We need to be ready to support them. And I think, to me, that really captures the shift in thinking that has to occur for supported living to really work. From my perspective, anyone that's an adult that wants to live on their own is ready. It then becomes the challenge for all the professionals to figure out the supports that the person needs in conjunction with them and their family, how we can fade those supports, what technologies we can be used to replace supports in some cases, whether or not the person has a roommate, whether or not they want to live on their own, what to do when staff doesn't show up, how to ensure that crises aren't created by staff. All of those things that make this so much more complicated than rocket science in some ways. But I always have to think about the fact, too, some statistics, and that's that 85% of people with intellectual disabilities receive no support through the service system. They're figuring out ways to make it work with family, with friends, with networks that have been created because the service system didn't strip them of those kind of community resources that are available to most of us. So it's moving away from thinking of a continuum and realizing that everyone's ready to live on their own. It's people that aren't ready are those that are seeing the liability, refusing to allow the risk, or finding the barriers that may or may not exist. And those are the thoughts I have about this question, and it comes up often. And there's no silver bullet, as we like to say, but we have to start from a place of competence. We have to assume competence to start with. And if we start doing that, we'll find that people can live much more independently. I know that Liberty Corner Enterprises, Greta Bird, she said that one thing they're seeing with some of the people that they support is as they develop lives, they want less and less support. So that's something to keep in mind, too. And that's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Okay, we've received some questions through the webinar tool, so I'm going to go ahead and ask those. One is regarding staffing, and it said the question is from Carla, and she asked, do you provide overnight staffing for any of your key holders? And if so, how are they paid?
Yes, we do, and it's done each one is done differently. Some receive pay, and some receive a combination of rent and pay. And the best thing to do is to talk to your insurance people on how and your HR people on how you can do that. But you can do it.
Great, thank you. Another question from Nancy is, are you able to support level 3 SL folks with the Innovation's current rate provided?
Yes, and you have to be creative.
Can you give us some examples of your creativity?
The families help out because the families are ready for this to happen, and using technology, using people that live next door. Right.
Great. So a more holistic community approach to supporting an individual instead of just relying on the paid supports, it sounds like.
Right. Yeah. It's not. Yes. It does call for a 24/7 staffing strategy, but a strategy is a good word.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay. That is all that we have for today. I would like to thank Lars and Janet from FIRST for providing us with this information and examples of individuals living lives of their choice in the community. You will be receiving a survey that will be sent out later today. Please take just a couple seconds to let us know what you thought of the webinar, how we can improve, and what information you would like to receive about supported living. In addition, a copy of this archived webinar and PowerPoint presentation will be available on the DD Council website, and the link is there. So thank you all for your attendance today. We appreciate you taking time out of your busy day, and we look forward to you joining us at our next webinar. Thank you.
Thank you.